So, superconductors, right? If you're not familiar with superconductors, neither am I. I can't pretend I know anything really about them except how cool superconductor wires look. That's what I'm really after. A superconductor has no electrical resistance when you lower the temperature. A lot of scientific stuff. It's used in like MRI machines and stuff. Anyways, I don't know anything about that, so we're not going to talk about that. If you look at the inside pattern, it's niobium with like copper or niobium titanium with bronze, different configurations. Patrick Adair designs, he has a cool YouTube channel where he makes rings, and it's a possibility that you've seen him make a superconductor ring. Looks like it's like things going through. It's just super cool. I want to try making the actual material because I want to make a project from a superconductor. And cheap Mennonite boy, I could be like, oh, I'll just buy it for like 30 bucks. Or I could spend a whole week and $100 worth of material. And all my time, I don't know why I threw that, over dramatic. I just want to make it. So that's what we're going to do today. So because I'm actually not making a real superconductor, like I don't care how it performs, I want the aesthetic of it. What I'm going to try to do is take this niobium, which I could not forge weld last week, which I was hoping to use for this. I'm going to actually cut it into small strips and then TIG weld it together to make it into solid bar, hopefully about 3/16 diameter round. And then that's what I'm going to use for the infill of the superconductor. So that's what I'm going to start doing, cutting it here. This is the failed attempts from last week. If you didn't see the video, tried forge welding it together and it didn't work out. So that's the way, that was totally in the past. We're not thinking about that right now. Moving forward. I made this little contraption up. I'm hoping it's going to help a little bit to spread the gas out to get a better purge, and then we'll get welding. Weld it up! So I got them all welded up, which is awesome. And I'm gonna try kind of a weird setup here. I got a chuck and a chuck. I'm not quite sure how well this part's gonna be held, and I'm gonna attempt to machine it round. If that doesn't work, we're gonna have to grind it round. But I thought, hey, you know what? Let's give it a shot and see what happens. So that's what we're doing. So I'm not super happy with that. I'm gonna do a little bit of rough grinding on the belt sander and then see if that will make this a little bit better to get it closer in the lathe. All right, we're gonna give this another shot here. So I've just found that a combination of using the belt sander by eye and then here on the lathe is getting these guys pretty good. So I'm about halfway through. I'm gonna keep going and get them done. So the niobium rods are all finished, and now we're on to the, to me, a really exciting part of this project, and I'm gonna try to make my copper solid round bar, because I don't have one. We're gonna try to make that up. So what I've done is I've got all these pieces cut here, and we're gonna attempt to use this ladle. I have no idea if this is gonna work. This is originally probably not for copper, it was probably for lead or something like that. I need something to support that, hang on. I'm gonna put that in there, and then we're gonna try to melt all of this copper and then pour it into a mold, which then I'm gonna use to make the superconductor out of. I guess I'll just put that all in. It's pretty sweet. There's like a handful of different ways we can go about all of this. So I'm just gonna try this way, see if it works. I feel like I'm trying to melt butter in a frying pan, except it's not melting. It'd be nice if it actually melted. Should I put a fire brick on top of that? I feel like this is one of those ideas that in 5 minutes you're gonna be like, that was the stupidest idea I've ever had in my whole entire life. What was I even thinking? Like oxidized and junk. Oh, it did melt a little bit there. Oh, I think I burned a hole through the ladle. Yeah, that was definitely the dumbest idea. Do we have to show this on video, or can we just cut this whole thing out? So we're gonna melt the copper in the gas forge. Wow, that was cast iron too, and it blew right through that thing. That's, oh, stuck, hey? All right.
So how did the cast iron melt and the copper did not?
Because it was hot on that side, I guess. Not stuck bad. There we go. So what I'm doing here is, this is a little like canister crucible thing I made up. And I'm just crunched these pieces of copper up so they'll fit in better. The plan was to originally pour the molten metal into this, but what we're gonna do is just stick them in here. Bring it up to temperature, and hopefully this will work better than the coal forge. Woo. It's so cool. So I'm just gonna let it cool off. I'm not gonna pour it out or anything. We'll just let it cool down, I'll cut it off, and I'm hoping I can just grind away everything that's junk. So that works really good. That's really, really fun. Here we go. It's, whoa, stuck. I think it's already relatively solid. You feel like a little kid with the campfire with the stick, right? You just keep poking, you're like, oh, should I just poke? No, I'm not gonna poke it. Just walk away, Tim. Man, I really wanna try casting now. Would that be so fun? Ah, oh, so many things to do, so little time. Okay, so I'm totally impatient. I should be waiting, but I'm gonna quench it. It's not very hot, like, not too bad. So we're gonna give it 0. Oh, that's not good. Looks like there's a hole in the middle of my thing. Oh boy, that would be so funny. Big old hole. Wow, that looks pretty cool though, the copper shining through on the dark. Oh, that texture. Ooh, that's still pretty warm. That is so cool. All right, I'm gonna cut this thing off. So it's a little bit rougher than I was hoping. I've got some holes in it, but I'm gonna start cleaning it up and we'll see how this thing looks. So I got the round bar, it's worked out pretty good, and these are the niobium round bars. So a normal person would have just bought this, and we could just be starting the video right here. Obviously, I'm not a normal person, so we spent the last 2 days making this stuff. Anyways, just gonna do my layout. Oh, you're not supposed to have seen that because that's actually technically my layout from in the future. Future Tim did that. Okay, so I got all my holes drilled in it here. So now what I'm gonna do is plan to cut the niobium, and hopefully I'm not gonna have too much of an issue. I drilled them under a little bit. Get these in there. That one would probably go in. So I'm actually over here at the fly press, and what I found on most of them is that I can actually use it to press them in. Some of them are slightly tapered just because of the handwork to make them, and the press doesn't give the impact that the hammer does to crack them, so you can actually get them pretty tight, which is super cool. All that said, it'll probably break on this one, right? That's where a fly press is so much better than a hydraulic press, because as you do it manually, you can feel and control what's going on to know if something's going to break or how it's all going. That's the big, big pro to a fly press. So I got all the niobium rods in here, and I'm really happy in how that turned out. So now we're ready to start sticking it back in the forge and actually going to heat the copper up to try to sort of bond it or get it as tight of a, not really sure, it's not welding, but you know, adhere as tight as we can to the niobium. So hopefully we don't wreck it. But I thought just quickly talk about how these things are made in industry, or at least as best as I can figure out. I haven't found a lot of information. But how they do it is they actually start with like a solid, bigger chunk of copper, and they put a solid piece of niobium in it, or however they want to configure it, but it's a big chunk. And then they extrude it, and so that's drawing it through basically a hole. You just push it through and it forms in. So they do that, and they make them into long strips, and then it'll be smaller pieces of niobium with a copper cladding, and then they actually bundle those together into a big bundle. Like the video I saw them doing, it was like literally like this big, about 4 feet tall. Clad that in copper, refuse it, and then re-extrude it or draw it down. It's sort of like if you would take a bunch of these TIG rods like this is just for TIG welding, but when you would bundle that together and then weld it, that's kind of how you would get these really fine patterns. So this piece here, and how you see people building stuff out of superconductors, this is before it's drawn down into the wire. So it would be then drawn down very thin, and that's how they do it. Anyways, little food for thought for you, or information, if you will. So here's the parts from the milling machine, and what I've done is machined it to hopefully fit this, yeah, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use this vise to tighten it up as tight as I can go. And then I'll weld this up, and then this whole entire thing is going to go into the forge and act as a clamp while it heats up to compress that copper around the niobium. So let's see how much it compresses right now. Oh wow, that's incredible. I just pretty much compressed it the full amount. I can machine more off if I feel like that's not tight enough. Wow, I'm really, really surprised at that. So I just took about another 20 thou off here. So I'm going to try that and see how that works for us. Oh, man. That's really good. Really happy with that. Okay, I'm going to take it all apart, clean it up, and we'll weld it together, and then it's ready to go into the forge. Okay, things are getting a little weird here. So I didn't want to just stick this thing, this is the conductor here, in the forge, because I'm pretty worried about the niobium reacting with the oxygen. We had that problem last week when I was trying to forge weld it. So what I'm going to try to do, is we got the pipe in here, and on the other end it's plugged with a fitting for the argon to come in. And then I'm going to slip this thing in here when the forge is on. Well, actually, oh, that wasn't good. I'm going to have to work on that. Anyways, it'll be hot. I'll slide this down, and then I'm going to heat it up by heating the tube up, making it hot on the inside, but it'll be fully purged with argon. So hopefully there's no oxygen. We heat it up to about 2,000 degrees. I don't have to go crazy hot because I just got to get the copper like soft, right? And then I'm just going to close this end up. The challenge is I can't really see it. So I'm going to close it up like this, so I have a little bit of a hole so I can check, and then I can pull this up to here. I should just look at this if this is actually going to work. Yeah, so I can just pull it up and check it. And I have the tube sloped. Argon is heavier than air. And so it'll push, if it's on that end, it'll fill up with argon and then push the air out, so I can have this with a small gap and be okay. Little crazy setup, that's what we're gonna try. So I've just about got the argon hooked up here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna start the forge and heat this thing up before I put the superconductor in there, because I wanna just make sure it's clean and that this is gonna work too. This fitting is getting way too hot here, so I'm gonna take it off. Okay, so I just got a big honking long steel pipe welded on. So we're gonna fire this thing up and try it again. Cross our fingers, here we go. All right, here we go. Fire on. Okay, so I just turned the forge off. I'm letting it cool down. Looks like a orange heat, so hopefully that wasn't too hot. But we're just gonna let it cool off here, and then we'll pull it out and see how it looks. Okay, nothing wrong there. Interesting. I'm gonna knock it out and I'm gonna see what it looks like. So I'm just doing the final hand sanding here on the one side so we can see this thing really nice. Guys, I'm so stoked right now that this experiment has worked. I noticed that there's a couple flaws on 2 of the niobium rods, but I'm not concerned enough about that to say that this doesn't work. So I think we can check this one off the list that it works. Yes, we can make a superconductor or something that looks like a superconductor. And so now I can jump ahead and start making projects out of this, which is super exciting. I'm so pumped about some of the things that we can do with this now. So I'm just gonna finish hand sanding this. We'll show it to you. Before that, I'd just like to thank you for watching. Always appreciate the comments and the likes. Would love it if you would consider subscribing to the channel. If you want to see more content like this, hit that bell notification, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, have a great one.